All right, let's bring in right now Democratic Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia. He's a member of the Budget, Armed Services, and Foreign Relations Committee. Let's ask you first, Senator, about what's happening with our banking system, the White House moves to shore up that banking system. I was hearing through the weekend, I'm sure you were too, from just a variety of people, whether they were in the big banks or whether they were regulators or whether they were investors and business owners, that they expected, if the White House didn't move aggressively enough, they said, listen, First Republic's going to go down, then Regions is going to go down, other regional banks across the South, Midwest are going to go down. They painted a really bleak picture, and some are still concerned that these regional banks aren't as steady as they should be. What's your best insight on this right now? How worried should we be?
Well, Joe, so in Virginia, our regional and community banks have been really kind of a pillar. A diverse banking system that isn't just the big guys, but it's also smaller banks are really important, particularly in underserved or rural communities. I think the Biden administration did the right thing by using the systemic risk provisions of Dodd-Frank to jump in and guarantee depositors, the shareholders and management, they're going to be held accountable and they're not getting their money back, but depositors will. And that certainly provides confidence. But the Fed has announced that they're going to do a significant, intense study of what happened by May 1, so they can lay out on the table, are there additional changes that we need to make? I'm particularly concerned about this sort of social media driven run that just happened within a couple of days. When you have social media that can accelerate a psychological loss in confidence together with technology that facilitate instantaneous transactions, that may raise some issues that are a little bit different than the classic bank runs of the past that may need some additional work by Congress.
Well, I mean, you look, Senator, at what happened, the panic of, I think the rightful panic following crypto's collapse, especially in Silicon Valley. You almost have a feeling that fed into this. And unfortunately, because of social media, as you say, that fear, that contagion spreads across the nation. So I'm wondering, how fearful are you that investors that are investing in regional banks, like you said, the sort of banks that we need as a country, so we're not consolidated into four major banks. How concerned are you right now that some of the biggest investors are saying, well, forget about that. I'm going to put my money in JP Morgan Chase. I'm going to put it in Bank of America. I'm going to put it in Citigroup. I'm going to put it in Wells Fargo.
Well, we do need to watch that. Look, SVB was an unusual bank, as you know, because they were so heavily in the tech sector. So it wasn't a bank with a kind of traditionally diverse portfolio. And you've seen all the tech sector economic challenges recently. Secondly, we've got to dig into the effect of the Fed raising interest rates pretty quickly. They have an anti-inflationary mission. They also have a banking stability mission. When you raise interest rates, you drop bond prices. A bank like SVP had a lot of their assets in government bonds, which is normally thought to be kind of a safe bet. But the rising interest rates were dropping bond prices, devaluing their assets at the same time that tech customers were having challenges. So, how much is this about tech or crypto? How much is it more systemic? But the good news is the federal regulators had the tools to come in when there was a challenge, unwind the bank, use the systemic risk criteria, and guarantee depositors that they would be made whole. And I hope and suspect that will be sufficient.
Senator, you sit on the Armed Services and Foreign Relations Committee, so we want to switch topics and get your reaction to what we've been talking about all morning. This is Governor Ron DeSantis deeming the conflict between Russia and Ukraine simply a territorial dispute, echoing what Donald Trump has said, meaning that at least right now, the two theoretically leading candidates for the Republican nominee want to curtail significantly U.S. involvement with the war, which is perhaps allowing Putin to play the waiting game he wants. What's your response?
Calling a dictator's illegal invasion of a sovereign nation to undermine its democracy, committing human rights abuses along the way, a territorial dispute. Give me a break. I mean, anybody who's paying attention to this knows this is just not a territorial dispute. This is not like Michigan and Ohio trying to decide where the border should be near Toledo. This is an illegal invasion with gross human rights abuses. And so so watching Governor DeSantis, who I don't know, do this like super soft pedaling of the language, I find very, very troubling. And as you indicated in the last segment, he was using very different language a few years ago. He seemed to understand who Russia was and what was at stake in Russia and Ukraine. I don't know what's happened to him since.
Senator, can we switch gears and look at another conflict? And the Senate's about to vote on a bill to repeal both the 1991 and the 2002 authorizations for use of military force in Iraq and the Gulf Wars. I think most Americans would be surprised that there still was authorization for military use of force in those conflicts.
Katy, you're right. These authorizations, 91, more than 30 years ago, and then the 2002 authorization, and we're coming up on the 20th anniversary of the invasion of Iraq in March of '03, is still on the books. And Iraq's no longer an enemy. In fact, Secretary Austin was there last week to commit at Iraq's request that we would continue to work together with Iraq to battle ISIS and other terrorist groups and check Iranian aggression in the region. So why would you need a war authorization against a nation that's now a security partner? I have been working for years in a bipartisan way to try to repeal outdated authorizations and then revise those that continue to have utility. But the good news is it's taken me a while to get interest, but now we have solid interest. We're going to have probably 65 votes on the floor. We'll have a first vote this week and do final amendment debate and vote next week. I give huge credit to Todd Young of Indiana. He's been my partner on this on the Senate side. There's a huge bipartisan group of supporters on the House side. This will be the first time Congress will have voted to terminate a war authorization in over 50 years, and it's an important constitutional power that Congress should guard very jealously.
It is time. Talking of time, Democratic Senator Tim Kaine, I know you have a train to catch. We're going to let you run. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much. Take care.